Lesson 3 focused on using a percent proportion, is over of equals percent over 100, or part over whole equals percent over 100, to solve problems involving percents. Lesson 4 is about showing you another method of solving percents using a percent equation. This equation is very much related to that proportion, but some of you may prefer using this equation. When you understand exactly how it works, it is quicker. It is more efficient to use the equation than it is to use the proportion. But it's up to you on what you want to use. I am going to ask you to practice both of these methods today, but from here on out, I'm going to let you make the choice on which one you prefer, and as long as you're accurate and show all your work, I'm cool with whatever you choose to do. So today we're going to solve percent problems using the equation. And here we still have that percent, and we still have the whole number, and we still have the part. And they do use a couple different colors in what I do, but it's still the same representation. So the part this time goes on the outside, or the A here represents the part. The P represents the percent, but here's the important part. When we write the percent in the equation, we have to write it as a fraction or as a decimal. That's the tricky part. Then we're going to take the percent times the whole number to get the part. I want you to go ahead and split your workspace in half. I'm going to pause the video and write up our 2 questions that I want you to solve. Alright, once you've split your workspace in half, we're going to solve 2 equations, or 2% problems with the percent equation. The first one we're going to do is what number is 24% of 50, and then you're going to try out what number is 73% of 200 by yourself. Now, the easiest way that I can remember, because I'll be honest with you, I can't remember this setup of the part of the wholes on the outside of the equal sign, and then you have your percent times your whole. It's tricky for me. So the way that I remember is to actually translate the sentence into math using some key words. When we see the word what, it represents that we don't know that quantity, and we use a variable to represent it. And we usually use X, so I'm just going to stick with it. You can use a Z, a T, or a P, it doesn't matter. But then is means equals. So when I see the word is, I'm going to put an equal sign. And then when we see the word of typically means multiplication. Knowing that, I can read from left to right and actually translate the sentence into an equation that I can solve. But the one thing you have to remember is when we come across a percent, I'm not just going to put 24 or 73 into the equation. I actually have to transfer it or convert it to a fraction or decimal. I prefer decimal. You can definitely do a fraction. It's up to you. Alright, so let's translate this first sentence. What number is 24% of 50? The first thing that we come across is what number. That means I don't know, so I'm going to put a variable, so X. Then I come across is. Is means equals, so I'm going to go ahead and put an equal sign. Then I have my 24%, but I have to change it to a decimal before I plug it into my equation. So I'm going to put in 24 hundredths. Of means multiply, so I'm going to put a multiplication symbol. And then 50 is just my number 50. So to solve this one, I'm going to look at my equation. And remember, we're always looking to see if there's any math I can do on either side of that equal sign. Since on the left-hand side, all I have is an X, I'm just going to write it down. But on the right-hand side, I have 24 hundredths times 50. Well, 24 hundredths times 50, if I type that in my calculator, I get 12. 12 is 24% of 50, and that's my answer. I want you to go ahead and try this example. and tell me what you get. In example 1, we were focused on finding part of a number. And now we're going to be finding that percent. So first example here is 9.5 is what percent of 25. And then the example you're going to do on your own is 36 4/10 is what percent of 40. The same rules apply. I'm going to read it from left to right and use those key words I mentioned above to translate the problem. 9.5 is just a number, so I'm going to write it down. 9.5 is means equals. What number means what percent means I don't know the percent. Now, since it's a percent, I'm going to use P just to help me out. And then of 25, of means multiplication. And then I have 25. So I have 9.5 equals P times 25. Well, this is a one-step equation. And in order to solve or isolate my variable P, I have to do the inverse of multiplication. The inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by that 25. I'm going to 1 those out. And then I'm left with P equals, if I do 9.5 divided by 25, I get 38 hundredths. But remember, we're finding a percent. And when we plug in a percent into the equation, we're either putting it in as a decimal or as a fraction. And since 38 hundredths is in my decimal form, I have just a tiny little bit of math magic to do to change it from decimal form to percent form. Since it's in decimal form, I'm going to move that decimal 2 places to the right, which is the same as multiplying by 100. And 38 hundredths then becomes 38%, which is the answer. 9.5 is 38% of 25. So give this example problem a shot, and let me know what you get. Example 3 is about finding the whole. So we found the part, we found the percent, now we're going to use the equation to find the whole. The skills are still the same. I am translating what I see. So 39 is going to be on the outside of the equal sign. Is means equals. 52% written as a decimal would be 52 hundredths. And then of what number means that I'm going to be multiplying by my unknown or my variable. So I have 52 hundredths times x equals 39, or 39 equals 52 hundredths times x. This is a one-step equation. I'm going to divide both sides by 52 hundredths. Those 1 out. I'm left with x equals, if I type in 39 divided by 52 hundredths into my calculator, I would get 75. I'm not looking for a percent, so it's just 75. 39 is 52% of 75, and that would be my answer. Now I want you to give the example 18 is 15% of what number a try, but I hope you noticed that my unknown or my variable in each of the 3 examples we've done today changes places depending on what we're trying to find. Just like it did when we were doing our proportion and finding different parts of that proportion, our variable shifted spots based on what we were trying to find. The method is still the same regardless of what you do. You just have to be careful about your placement of your numbers.